Good evening and welcome to the Wakefield School Committee meeting of Tuesday, October 10th, 2017. We'll begin by calling this meeting to order and reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And I'll read the mission statement of the Wakefield Public Schools. The vision of the Wakefield Public Schools is to graduate students who are confident, lifelong learners who are respectful and caring members of their community. Our mission is to prepare students for college, career, and community by providing rich and challenging curriculum, high-quality instruction, and educational experiences that meet their individual needs and interests. With that, we'll go to the public comment portion. Is there anyone from the public who wishes to speak? Okay, seeing none, I will actually jump to Dr. Smith because we have a special guest here tonight.
We do. So in terms of inspiring the love of learning, I'd like to invite Katie DeCourcy, grade 3, up to the front to get her summer reading prize. And Jerry, would you join me and maybe a photo? All right. So, Katie, you participated in summer reading this summer, right? And can you tell us about maybe a book that you read this summer?
I read Inside Out and Back Again.
Oh, and what did you like about that book?
It was a mystery what was coming next.
Yeah, so it was surprising and exciting the whole way? That's great. So do you love to read?
Yes.
Oh, well, we're really, really proud of you, and I'm glad that you could make it tonight to get your prize. So congratulations to you. Okay. And thank you to your whole family for coming to support you. We love to see families to support, and I heard that homework and ice cream might be in your future, so I'll let you guys go. Thank you.
Okay, and our Student Advisory Council. Hiya.
All right, so we got a lot this week. So this Monday, the METCO program is holding a discussion panel, giving the senior METCO members of the program a chance to speak about how the program has affected their lives, and the Diversity Leaders program, as well as a couple other classes, in addition to teachers, are welcome to that discussion. Also, the next Wednesday is a half day dedicated to Professional Development Day. And this Thursday, we are doing ALICE training at the school during E-Block. And a heads up, the Thursday, the 26th, is Fright Night at the Galvin, where they'll be showcasing the TV department's movies and videos that they've made, in addition to the art department's carved pumpkin display at the BB Library. And Spirit Week, hosted by Student Council, is all of next week. And at the end of the week will be the second and last home football game. And the Saturday after is the Micah band competition.
Great, thank you. Anything from the committee? Okay.
Thank you. Full plate.
We will go into the consent agenda.
Move that the school committee approve the minutes of the September 26, 2017 school committee meeting as presented.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Discussion? All in favor? Thank you, everyone. Okay, budget items. Mr. Purfling.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In your packet this week, I included a primer on Circuit Breaker and how Circuit Breaker was developed by DESE back in, I believe, 2004. Why it was implemented and what it means for Wakefield. This past week or two, we received from DESE the circuit breaker reimbursement percentage for the state. Last year it was 73%. This year it's 65%. So a little disheartening. It is above what we had projected because our circuit breaker net claim came in higher. But had we gotten that higher percentage, it certainly would have helped with our special education costs this year. But I did include that in your packet. It's just a history of how it came to be. how it works, how it's calculated, what steps our special education department has to take every year to submit a claim. And then it goes into the history of where the numbers came from for the last 5 years, or 6 years, I guess, all the way back to fiscal year 13 in the packet. So I just wanted to include that. I kind of went over some of this with the Finance and Facilities Subcommittee on Friday last week, and we kind of tossed around maybe putting together a quick document to share with the full committee for anybody who was unaware of the entire process. So seeing if there's no questions on that, I'll move on. Okay, great, excellent. So the budget reports this month, I was able to get salaries encumbered to the best of our ability. There are 2 categories that are still not encumbered. That would be substitutes, and I take that and just divide that out evenly over the year. I just didn't get an opportunity to do that before the reports were done, as well as extracurricular. Those are our athletic coaches and our performing arts and specialists. So those are the 2 things that aren't encumbered. Right now, it's showing a balance of about $635,000. Once I encumber those 2, it will wipe that out. So we should be pretty close to where we need to be for the year on salaries. A couple of highlights in the report. You will see that special education tuition is a little bit out of whack. It's early in the year. We found a couple of unexpected, unanticipated special education cases that Ms. O'Neill is projecting have either gone out or will be going out. So she's encumbered them. So we are currently working with Dr. Smith, Ms. O'Neill, the entire executive team to identify pockets that we can help offset some of that unanticipated expense. So it's still early in October, but we did want it in these reports just to kind of give everybody a heads up that we are working towards reducing that number and doing everything within our power to do what we can to get it down. We did encumber transportation. Pretty much everything is encumbered. There's still a few things that aren't. In light of the special education tuition situation, we have put a slight freeze on the budget right now. We've asked all principals to encumber all known expenses for the year. This includes putting some money aside for supplies, some money aside for textbooks that are still needed. Sometimes we can't buy science supplies until later in the year because labs have to happen, and you don't want to buy your frogs now for a lab in March or something. So we've asked them to encumber everything that they're aware of, and then anything after that, we'll just have to make sure that there's enough money in the budget near the end of the year to cover it. So we've just put a slight freeze on the budget right now. All the principals are aware, all the directors. They're all working to get everything encumbered right now. So unless there's any questions on the monthly report, I'll move on.
So just not maybe on the report, and this is something I know we talked about at the Finance and Facilities Subcommittee, but when you look at, but maybe first a question of both you and Dr. Smith, but when you look at the net claims that we've made under circuit breaker, between FY14 and FY18, we look at it more than 100% growth, right? And is it a reflection of the growth in special education services that we're providing? I imagine the answer to that is yes. And is it consistent with? Is this something we're experiencing as a district uniquely, or is this something that we share with other districts, and how are we kind of thinking about? I know in last year's budget we had some services that we built in that try to address some of this growth, but it might be a chance to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I can't speak for other districts specifically. I know that special education costs are a concern for all districts. It's been part of the Chapter 70 reform conversations. Many people are very concerned about special education costs, but I think in Wakefield we have had some very severe cases that have needed to go out of district. That just students that their cases are so severe that we can't support them in district, and some of these are residential placements, and they that's why circuit breaker is there. Circuit breaker is there to protect the district from these large cases that go out of district. We're, again, as I explained, we're responsible for the first 4 times per pupil spending, and then circuit breaker covers this year 65% above that. So that's why circuit breaker is there to stop the lack of a better word, stop the bleeding
Yeah.
if we have some very severe cases. And you're right, from FY14, these are not just all out-of-district cases either. There are some in-district students in these circuit breaker claims, students who maybe receive high levels of speech and language, and OT, and PT, and vision, ABA vision services. So if their services are enough throughout the year that would be 4 times the per pupil spending, they would be included in the claim also.
Right.
So, but the majority of this is out of district, and that's a pretty fair statement. But you're right, it has over doubled in a 4-year period, from $913,000 to $2.1 million. So it's seriously, I really just, Ms. O'Neill is, I think, just doing everything within her power to identify every student's needs and support every student the way we need to support them. And I think she's doing a great job of it. It's just I think the cases that she's been presented with have been a challenge.
Yeah, thank you.
I would just concur and say that this is not uniquely a Wakefield issue. I think, in my conversations with superintendents, I think everyone is really working with these escalating costs. And we had several, families move into the district this year, and that the last couple of years that did not happen. This year it did happen.
Right.
And of course we welcome all of our families,
Yeah.
but that this, some of these costs are just related to those
Yeah,
incidents.
and you mentioned the growth of particular diagnoses for students over the past few years that we've seen. Yeah, I just think it's an important, conversation to have as we think about budgets and planning over the next few years. And, note again, I think, Mike, you made this point, but over the past 5 or 6 years, the reimbursement from the state has hovered around, 72 to 75%, and this year 65%. So that's a significant drop off in terms of the help we're getting from the state. So
Yeah, I think that 8% from last year to this year, that really could have helped our current deficit that we're
Right.
facing. It really could have, and it's going to be yet another obstacle on top of Title I and some of the other things that we've been facing. It's another obstacle, and we're strong, we're resilient. We'll find ways.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Markham.
Thank you. This is a very informative report, Mike, so thank you and members of the Finance Committee for asking that it be put together. One thing that I'd like to add to remind us all or put a piece of perspective around when we have our legislators in each year, one of the things that we can absolutely continue to ask them in great stead is to support a circuit breaker. That is one of the actual things that they have some control over. We all talk about the Chapter 70 formula and all of that, and while that's certainly doable, that is a much bigger, broader problem than the advocacy for increased funding around a circuit breaker. So that is certainly it's controlled by the legislative process and the state budget process, but that is something that has really a dramatic impact on our local budget. That's also funds that will come directly to the school department. So there's really great depth in our being advocates for circuit breaker funding with the legislators next time they're in.
I think it's important that when circuit breaker was brought in 2004, it was legislated at 75% reimbursement, and it really has very rarely hit that point since the mid-2000 period. I think it's dipped here and there and come back up, but 65%, that's 10% below the required reimbursement.
Right.
So it's certainly difficult to swallow when you get that news at MASBO.
I also just maybe want to just clarify a point that Mike made. He mentioned a slight budget freeze. I'm not sure what the word slight means, but
Sugarcoating.
But I just want to clarify what that means, because sometimes that can be, if people hear the budget is frozen, what does that mean? That might make people nervous. It's nothing to be nervous about. The way I explain it to the principals is that basically what that means is I'm asking them to encumber everything that they know in purchase orders now, so that Mike and I are very clear on what's needed between now and the end of the year. It doesn't mean that if teachers need something or a principal needs something, that they certainly, it really just means that they have to call, tell me specifically what it is they need, how much it costs, and just what is the rationale, and just so that we're really attending to every dollar that goes out, given the fact that, we're running a little bit of a deficit in that area at the beginning of the school year, but still very, very early. But I just want to make that point of clarification. Sometimes people hear that phrase, budget freeze, and they send people unnecessarily into a panic. There's nothing to be panicked about.
Is Is this for the foreseeable future? Is it for the end, up until the end of the school year, the slight budget freeze?
So I'll take the word slight out. So the idea of a budget freeze would be, that means from now to the end of the school year, I want to monitor the budget very, very carefully in that regard. And I think it's just really helpful to me to make sure that I'm making good decisions about what we need now, prioritizing things, what might be able to wait, and it's a good measure to take. I haven't not had to do that the last 2 years, but that's okay. Each year is a different year, and so that's where we are right now.
Okay.
And I think every year we do freeze the budget, but
At
we
some
do it
point.
so late in the year. It's just for us to close out the year. We ask all principals to get everything in for the end of the year. It usually happens in April or May. Best case scenario is April or May. So we are doing it quite a bit earlier, but we've done it this early since I've been here in my 5 years. It's happened this early also in other years. It just, you have those unforeseen costs, and you do everything within your ability to try and control them.
Mr. Markle.
So on that subject, a point that I would like to just either ask about or certainly throw out there, on the budget report, line 17, on the textbooks, appears there's $155,000 left that is unencumbered as of the end of September. My only advocacy there is that I would assume that those are the type of things that we're asking principals and department heads to get.
To encumber,
That
correct.
we have gone through, and we've asked the department heads and others to go through a fairly extensive exercise in producing lists of the type of turnover and of supplies, materials, textbooks that we need. And we don't want to really be not allowing the teachers and the students to have access to that. The people went through a very credible process, and I think we should monitor that.
And these reports, as you said, they're almost 2 weeks old, and the freeze was effective last Friday. I can pretty much assure you that the textbooks were encumbered during the last week after these
Okay.
reports were printed. Yeah, so there were some textbooks that we were holding off. They were still evaluating some textbooks, I think, from central office standpoint. So some of that may be part of the big curriculum buy for the year that they're not evaluating, but making sure we have the right numbers and the right locations and everything.
Okay. And I'm just also hopeful that we continue to bear in mind that we have the Special Education Stabilization Fund,
Correct.
that I would much be more inclined to ask town to support us, as the purpose of that fund is, than to take resources away from teachers and classrooms.
Right. And so I think we just want to be really clear that our intention is not to use, for example, textbook money for that purpose. We're asking, in a budget freeze, it's really about asking people to encumber what they need so they can really just anticipate. These are, purchases that principals have been planning to make, but maybe just haven't yet, put them in the purchase order system. So as Mike said, I feel fully confident that we'll be able to fund what everyone needs for the school year. And then, as you know, stabilization fund is really, it's like snow and ice. When you may or may not be able to anticipate the kind of winter we're going to have. And so that's exactly what the stabilization fund is for, is if we find a couple of months down the road that we need that assistance, then that's, we'll be looking. As the last couple of years in the budget process, I think I've been very clear in saying that we've budgeted for known costs. There's no padding in there, so if there's unexpected costs, then that would be the time we would go and look at the stabilization account. But it's still a little bit early for that. It's only October. Sometimes you can make up some ground. Maybe we'll have a nice warm winter, and we'll make up some ground on fuel. It's really very early to say. So,
Ms. Morgan.
What's the balance in our stabilization fund right now?
is it 150?
$150,000.
Thank you. Back to Mr. Pickering.
All right, so to move on to the grant accounts, there's not a whole lot to report. Still waiting on a couple of grants to come in, the 274 grant, the 262 grant, and the 298 grant. So those should be coming in, but it's still pretty early in the year. We know this Title I situation is lower than last year, and the 240 grant, which is a special education grant, that also came in lower, but I think I reported that already, about $8,000 under what we anticipated it to come in. The majority of that money goes to fund salaries for our instructional support personnel, and about $100,000 of that goes to support contracted services. So I'll be working with Ms. O'Neill just to identify how we can make up that $8,000 shortfall in that line. So the other part of that is the IDEA grant from last year. The federal grants are now all 2-year grants, and there's about $6,000 left over from last year's funds. So we're only about a net of $2,000 off. So I'm confident that Ms. O'Neill and I can identify $2,000 to cut from that grant line. So. Moving on to the revolving accounts, everything's pretty much checking out. There's no issues. Certainly the last line has been updated from last meeting. The circuit breaker number did come in 1.365, so that number's in there. We currently have about 1.365 encumbered, or encumbered or expended, so we've pretty much tapped that. We do have a little bit of money left over from last year's circuit breaker, so that's going to help us also. There's about $60,000 left over from last year's circuit breaker account that will help us on that also. So we're looking at pennies everywhere, and we'll try and bring that down. Nothing else really to report on the revolving accounts unless there's questions. All right, I have 2 warrants, payroll warrant number 10 and payroll warrant number 12. I'd ask for the school committee to approve.
I move the school committee approve payroll warrant 10 and payroll warrant 12 as presented.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Discussion? All in favor? Thank you.
And Mr. Chairman, I do not have any gifts to present tonight.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Picklen. Okay, we'll go into chairman's comments now. I'm actually going to toss it over to Ms. Fortier, our chair of our policy subcommittee.
I'd like to move that the school committee approve school committee student member policy number 221 as presented.
Second.
Okay, motion's been made and seconded. Discussion, questions? Good. All in favor? And welcome to Kaya. Okay, Dr. Smith.
Okay, I'd like to invite Maria Sorrell, Director of Facilities and Transportation, and she's going to share with us, really excited that it's been kind of a long time in coming, that we've been really working on the idea of having a calendar and event scheduling kind of platform to really help us streamline everything in the Wakefield Public Schools. Maria and Jeff Weiner have done a terrific job of putting this together, so I just asked her if maybe she could present that for us.
Good evening. Thank you for having me here tonight. So of all the projects and things I get to present tonight, it gives me a special pleasure because this was a great project to work on. It's a project that has teeth and has impact. So few and far between do you get a project that you can really wrap an entire district around and everyone will feel it. So I'm pleased to present this update and overview of our consolidated WPS calendar and online scheduling tool. I'm going to scroll through it as I'm presenting. So key features include, so it's up on the district already. We are going to go live on Monday, October 16th. Let's see if I can get the mouse to work. Yep, got it. So it's under district calendars, and it's the last item. And there it is. So this really presents Wakefield Public Schools, the district calendar at a glance. What you see here are events for every single school, as well as district events for the entire month of October, presented here in a calendar format. You're able to, using the feature up here, you can do school-based views. You can choose 1 or 2 rooms. You're really able to customize your view. There's also on the top right the mouse isn't working, but there's a community portal, and that probably is probably one of the biggest elements that we're most excited about. This community portal will allow end users across the community and within the school the opportunity to provide self-service relative to looking for, signing, and really trying to evaluate whether space is available, who's using it, and it eliminates the paper process as a whole, which is hugely green for us, but it's really a tremendous benefit and gives sort of that immediate response to the community, as well as the school-based admin staff that are entering anything in the calendar. There's electronic approval and routing within the system, as well as notifications. So it will give reminders in advance of a meeting coming up, in advance of an event, so that whether it's a custodial support, whether it's AV support, technological support, technology support, they'll be able to be notified and be able to assess what the needs are of a group prior to it coming in. This will be a comprehensive view of how we use our space. It really is. You can see the yellow highlight is the date that we're in, and you can see our first entry there is the WPS School Committee, and so you've made the calendar. The naming convention that we chose so that it would be simple to look at and for ease of use is each school location where the meeting is being held is what the first entry is, except for the WPS School Committee because we didn't put in the TV studio. You can see yesterday we had the holiday, which is listed Columbus Day. Central office will be monitoring and managing any of the centralized district data and school vacations, holidays, including half days with PD and anything else that impacts the entire district. The other piece that this product does, and it's school dude is the application that we're using, it allows us the ability to collect data. And so for the first time, we'll really be able to analyze and be able to assess how often our schools are being used, which spaces are being used, and it will really allow us to do a deeper dive into the data relative to how we use our space, which is exciting as well. All principals and directors were presented with an overview of this tool, this electronic tool, at the September Management and Operations meeting. And all building-based admin support were all trained on this. We'll do comprehensive trainings up to date, and we'll send out reminders, and we'll do refreshing trainings throughout the year to keep everyone's skill sets fresh. The one thing I can tell you, every single school was represented at the training, and every single school has input something in the calendar. We've given the schools up until this coming Monday, which is why we're going live on the 16th, to really put everything in place. So any other calendar that has been around the district, whether it's a school-based calendar or just a department calendar, will now be reflected on this district calendar, which is what makes it truly the electronic tool of the future for us. That said, we're only as good as the data that we input, and so really the onus is on each individual school and department to input it. And we are confident that everyone will, because this really is a great tool for everyone. It's a great resource. So you can even see we have the weekends, and then if you get down to the bottom, you can go to the next month. This is a transformative electronic tool for us for all those reasons that I mentioned, but really it allows someone coming to the district for the first time, for our parents, for our community, from anyone from the outside, being able to look at and seeing what we're doing as a district. And we do a lot as a district, as you can see by the October calendar. It also provides us with some transparency so that we show our community members, our family members, what's happening, when report cards are due, when there's a field trip meeting, when there are different activities. The prom will be in there, graduation will be in there, those type of events. The other thing it allows us to do, if we're having meetings during the day that we don't wish to publicize, it will merely block the space and just say there's a private booking for that time. And so it does give us the ability to monitor what we're putting out. So we're currently in test mode, and test mode is actually live on the website, but our official kickoff is Monday the 16th, where we'll put up directions relative to the community portal and how to use that. We're really excited about this tool.
Thank you, Maria. Anything from the committee? Mr. Liakos.
So thank you and congratulations. This is very exciting. I really like the design, and there's real clarity in the presentation. Just a couple of questions. So I see obviously athletics and extracurricular activities. So just so I understand the criteria, it starts with it's anything that's up there has to be a school-sanctioned event, right? So, for example, like PTO meetings or Wakefield Educational Foundation, sort of our partners. Are those kinds of things up there too? Oh, they are.
Yes,
okay.
absolutely.
Okay.
It's
So how do you
truly-
decide who can come in and who can't? How do you make those kinds of decisions?
So fortunately, we've not had to make many of those decisions,
Okay,
and
okay.
truly our space is so widely used, and it really is used by the school and school affiliates, certainly the PTOs,
Yeah.
WEF, but certainly community partners as well. WBA, for example,
Okay.
the Soccer Association, the local cheer, youth football cheer. So it really runs the gamut across the board of
So you're really
activities.
trying to be as inclusive as possible, right?
Exactly.
So that's one of the, so then related to that, obviously, as you pointed out, for this to be successful, it's got to be used, it's got to be popular, and it's got to be fed ongoing. So and key to that when you start up is going to be marketing, right? So what are you doing to make sure you're spreading the word about this through the schools, and is there anything the school committee can do to help with that?
So I would say talk it up.
Yeah,
Certainly
yeah,
on the
yeah.
website this coming Monday, we'll have a banner or something that sort of presents it in
Yeah.
its more formal state. Certainly the schools, we started to talk it up with the schools. It was presented again at that management and operations meeting. All of the building administrative support have been trained on it, as well as any directors that would need to input. So I'm all for a campaign. So we
Yeah.
can certainly
Okay.
embark on one. We really are excited about the tool.
And I'll add that I also spoke to the PTO leaders, and they're thrilled, because I know that
Oh, yeah,
it's always been a
sure.
challenge for them to know whether a space is taken or not
Yeah,
taken.
yeah.
There's been a lot of accidental double bookings
Yeah.
because they couldn't find.
Yeah, that
you know,
information alone has to be really valuable.
Right, so I think
yeah.
the ability to go to one place to see
Yeah.
everything that's happening
Yeah.
and to know or understand if a space is available is,
Yeah.
I think, a big lift for us. It's
Yeah.
no longer really a mystery.
Right.
Or a scavenger hunt to
Right,
figure it
right.
out. So
Thank
I
you.
think that'll be very helpful.
So then, just one last question. You probably thought about this, but the relationship then to the town's website, because sometimes, citizens or others, want to use space might go to the town website first. Are we thinking about how to link and how to relate well to the community's website too?
So thank you for that point,
Yeah,
because we
yeah.
actually didn't anticipate that.
Okay.
So that is something absolutely we can explore.
Yeah, yeah.
We're also trying to identify perhaps a smaller icon on the front page that's
Right.
sort of a quick glance
Sure.
piece. So working with Jeff Weiner on that.
All right.
And absolutely, so this was really a collaborative effort
Yeah.
between facilities and IT. So and it shows, I think.
Yeah, thank you, and thanks for the great work.
Very good.
Thank you very much, Maria.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Good night.
Okay, I think we have a 20-second transition for me to get my PowerPoint up. While we're doing that transition, under my other comments, I did want to let the school committee know that I was asked by the new superintendent's program again. This is the MASS organization in the Department of Education's new superintendent's induction program to present for the year one superintendents on developing core values and a district strategy on November 14th. So I look forward to doing that again this year for them. But I always feel like it's great for Wakefield, that what's happening in our district is kind of a model that they really, they want us to share with others. So today on my agenda, I just wanted to, I've been talking a little bit to the committee over the last month about developing a district data dashboard. So I wanted to, show everyone where we are with that and where we're going with it. So here we go. All right. So as you know, one of the strategy initiatives is to identify target student growth measures to inform teaching and to drive school and district goals. So this has been a piece of our strategy. And I think the purpose is to, what data can tell us to kind of inform where we're headed. A few important pieces. How do we track student learning outcomes over time? How do we determine whether our strategy and the community's financial investments are making a difference for students? And finally, how can data guide us to make school and district decisions, message our success, or make course corrections? And I think we're really at the point where this is very, very necessary. So first, we have our strategic investments. So that's basically now we've been living with our strategy. We're in, I believe it's year 4 of having a very, distinct and clear and evolving strategy. So is it working? How is it working? What is taking hold? And then I provided in your packets just a kind of a list by fiscal year of some of the most significant financial investments in teaching and learning that we've made together, and it's a really exciting list. And again, what is the data to show or bear out, how much of a difference some of these pieces are making? So this is something we've been talking about for a while. So I'm really guiding the principals and executive team of the district to think about data at 3 levels. Thinking about district level data, what are we going to monitor as a district, school district, over a 5-year period? So we want to think about overarching targeted data that answers some of those pointed questions about our investments and our strategy. At the school level, there'll be a thread, a very distinct connection. But schools will be monitoring their data through their school improvement plans over a 12-month period. And then that next level of data, which is perhaps the very most important level of data, it's what the PLCs are doing at the classroom level with them monitoring and responding on a continuous cycle to formative student data and student growth measures. So the focus, of course, always should be on student learning outcomes. What can we see about student growth and proficiency? And we wanted to identify what are the highest leverage skills for student success in college and career. And the ones I've listed here for you are really the ones that, as the leadership team, kind of in concert with their instructional leadership teams at the school level, have really identified. And those are reading comprehension. That cuts across all disciplines and content areas. It's critical from pre-K to 12 in informing everything that student success and everything that they do. Writing in response to reading, or writing in response to text, is a second high leverage skill. Third, mathematical reasoning, again, cuts across. It's not just about mathematics, but it's really kind of problem solving and reasoning skills that cut across all disciplines. Again, these are all really on a continuum pre-K to 12 or even through our post-academy. And then the fourth one is about using verbal skills. Students really be able to talk about their learning, to demonstrate their understanding, to present ideas, to collaborate with others, to debate, to engage in discourse. You've heard me talk a lot about some of these other, skills that students really need for college and career readiness, and that's certainly one of them. So I shared this with you, I think, back in August or early September, and this was the kind of the threads of what these high leverage skills look like pre-K through post-academy, where we're looking at both some quantitative measures and some of those qualitative measures. So this is really about students demonstrating their skills in reading and writing, again, across all content areas, and then on the qualitative side of the work, demonstrating their understanding through dialogue, discourse, or presentation of the work, exhibiting their work for an audience greater than one, and so forth. So when we talk about district level targets, that kind of higher, overarching look, we're really talking about kind of pulling 2 threads all the way through, the high leverage threads of reading and writing in response to reading, and then math discourse. So as we talked a lot about discourse, we said, well, there's lots and lots of ways to look and places that we can look at students talking, but what might be a specific place that we could really look to see if kids are making gains? And we decided to look at math because we'll have both qualitative data data, and we can also see if it's beginning to translate over to the more quantitative data, like the MCAS student growth, measures, or MCAS proficiency, to see if, I think theoretically we're saying that if kids are able to really talk about their reasoning out loud, collaborate with others, that this should and can translate into their independent work as well. And then as far as grade level focus, so of course we're interested in all grades, pre-K through 12 and post-academy, but for the purpose of targeting certain grades where we'll really look at the data, we wanted to pick some benchmarks along the way, and we selected grades 3, 5, 8, and 10. Those are years that we have MCAS data. It gives us, if we start in grade 3, it gives us kind of an opportunity to kind of see as kids are building those early childhood education skills. Grade 3 is a very common area, grade level to really look at where kids stand in terms of their performance and proficiency and grade level standard. And so all of these grades, we have MCAS SGP and other important data points to look at. So the first thread, the reading and writing in response to reading, for each of these, we constructed a theory of action. So this kind of goes back to what have been our investments, both financial and strategic, and what are we hoping the outcomes will be. I think that's a great place to start. So our theory of action around reading and writing is, so if we've invested in early childhood education, so that's the pre-K, we've opened the Doyle Early Childhood Center, we've invested in full-day kindergarten for all students, and we've invested in high-quality, consistent, standards-based curriculum, a standards-aligned curriculum. So that's our new phonics programming, our readers workshop, writers workshop. So kind of by putting all of those in place and delivered with high-leverage instructional practices, which is really what our strategy is about, then our theory of action is that over a 5-year period that we should begin to see students demonstrating increasingly stronger growth and performance in reading comprehension and writing in response to reading. So for data collection tools for that particular thread, we'll study trends in growth and proficiency using 3 target data points. One will be the reading benchmark system. That's for our younger students. And then a second will be our reading and writing curriculum-based common assessments with all of the new curriculum we've purchased. There are lots of formative assessments and unit assessments that we can use. And then third, of course, we can use the ELA MCAS as a data point. And for each of these, and you'll see later in the packet, we're looking at, as I've been really espousing all along, both proficiency but also growth. We're really weighing student growth, equally with the proficiency measures. So really looking at both. So growth and proficiency in each of those 3 data points. In math discourse, so our theory of action is, so if we really work to teach kids to verbally articulate their thinking in math, and certainly other subjects as well, but for the purpose of this particular data point, we're going to look at math, and contribute to group discussion where students are providing rationale with evidence, building on each other's ideas, questioning, solving problems together. Then our students will begin to demonstrate an increasing readiness for college and career, as well as stronger growth and performance in mathematical reasoning. So that's our theory of action. And how will we look at that is we'll really look at trends in our students' growth and proficiency. We have a rubric about dialogue and discourse where we'll be just really, looking and observing at how students are engaging and talking about their learning. We also have a continuum of socio-mathematical norms rubric that we can look at to see how our students are doing and how they're growing their skills in the mathematical standards of practice, again, across all grade levels, pre-K through 12. And then certainly the math MCAS as another data point, both the proficiency and the SGP, or growth measures. So what will the data dashboard actually look like? So it's going to look something like this. It will be really just a series of graphs on paper where there's the theory of action, and then a graph that will show the proficiency and growth trends for each of the target grade levels in each of those areas. I want to make it really clear, the data that you're looking at here is not real. I just threw in data to make the graph, look like a graph so that you could just see what ultimately it will look like. But the idea is to just really kind of look at our progress as a district over a 5-year period, and I think we should be looking at 5-year periods at a time. So this would be looking at our growth from 2015 to 2020. How are our students doing? Are they growing? Where is their proficiency level in some of these different areas? So there's a sample of what one of the reading ones might look like, and then I provided a sample. There it is.
And this would be a very good one, by the way.
It would be very good.
Love to see this.
This is wishful thinking.
This is good. I like this. I like this data.
The trend goes up, which is of course the hope. And then this one would be an example of what maybe the math discourse would look like. So we just get lots of evidence about students performing in class, what it looks like, and so we'd look at trends in their dialogue and discourse and the continuum of math norms. And again, we'll kind of compare that to the MCAS. I'll be really fascinated to see what that correlation might look like over time. But this is just a really great opportunity for us to take a look at the district level over a 5-year period. So the timeline looks like this. We plan to complete the framework of the district-level data dashboard by the end of this month. And then on November 29th is when I'll be bringing the principals in to share their school improvement plans. And I think what you're going to see is a very clear connection between, that overarching district data, and then the schools will be looking at those threads of data, in their own way. And you'll see what I mean when the time comes. But it'll all be connected. By January, the end of January, I wanted to make sure we had plenty of time. We're really on a search for data back to 2015, so we're trying to make sure that we can get all of our 2015 and 2016 and 2017 data into this district-level data dashboard. So we may have it done a lot sooner than that, but I wanted to just be realistic that there's a lot to look for and to put in there. And then by the end of this year, of course, we'll have our 2017, 2018 data to include, and then we'll be off to a great start with the 2015 to 2020 look, and then my suggestion would be over time we just keep advancing the 5 years and just keep watching 5 years worth of trends. This is something we've never really done in the Wakefield Public Schools. I think a lot of districts have really struggled with data and what to look at. I think we've all been just so overwhelmed with the amount of data that's kind of before us, and so this is really about focusing and targeting some meaningful data that we can really look at and use. And that's what I continuously espouse to the leaders in the district is data is only as good as using it to inform instruction or to inform school-based decisions. If we're just gathering it, then we're really testing and assessing, kind of needlessly. So we really should be assessing in a very targeted way to get the information that we need to really help, accelerate student learning and growth and outcomes. And then finally, in your packet, there's just a 2-page document that just gives you a little bit more specific information about the proficiency and growth measures for each of those threads. So that's it. So we're really excited about it, and hopefully we'll have all of that data ready to share pretty soon.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Smith. Anything from the committee? Ms. Poirier.
Dr. Smith, could you explain, I think I just sort of missed it, how you quantify some of those data points?
So actually, more of the qualitative measures?
Yeah, so you're trying to take the qualitative stuff and put it into a chart.
Yeah, so if you look at in the packet, I don't know if everyone has a hard copy. So this is qualitative growth measures is something that we're really working on right now. And so So for the discourse piece, for proficiency, our thought is to use in our guide to student growth measures, letter B, we have students use dialogue discourse to demonstrate their understanding, and we have a rubric that we've developed as a district. So we'll take data over the course of the year with the support of our math coaches and our math curriculum coordinator, school principals, observing students in real time, utilizing the rubric, and the rubric has proficiency levels based on kind of a growth mindset, not yet, or meeting proficiency, or kind of best practice, and then kind of exemplary level. What do kids look like when they're able to meet proficiency in this area? And so they'll be gathering a lot of data about what they see in real time using that rubric. And so for the proficiency measure, by the end of year data collection, we'll be looking at the percentage of students who meet that proficiency or higher on that element of that rubric through those many observations and data collection. For the growth measure, what we'll be using is the Continuum of Socio-Mathematical Norms rubric. And again, just a collection of observational data over time by some of the experts in the field, watching what kids are doing and how they're learning and how they're growing. For a data point, we're going to be looking at the percentage of students who move one or more performance level on that continuum over the course of the year. So we have one where we're really looking at, proficiency or higher, so that's our proficiency measure, and for our growth measure, we're actually looking to kind of see how well our kids are moving or learning or growing over time. So qualitative data can be, there are a number of ways to take qualitative data, but the best way to do it in schools would be to use some kind of a rubric and use observational data on, learning walks over the course of time.
And the people who are observing are you, the principals?
So it depends on which particular measure we're talking about. For math discourse, we're really going to be asking for the support of our math coach and math curriculum coordinator in concert with their school principals, and really just observing at students and what students are doing in regard to the standards of mathematical practice. For other data points, it could be myself or principals, for other student growth measures. But for this particular one, you really want your specialists in that area, because they're the most expert at really understanding the 8 standards of mathematical practice, what they look like in action. And I think any of us at this table could watch students talking about mathematics. I would suggest that I'm probably the most knowledgeable at this table in regard to the standards of mathematical practice and what kids should be doing and what that looks like. But the math coaches are even more expert than I am, because that's their content specialist area. So they'll be able to really pinpoint, where students need to grow. They'll be able to give feedback to teachers in their coaching cycles, to kind of help kids grow those skills and improve those skills over time.
I just wonder with using the subjective data and the people who probably have the most I'm trying to think of the right word. They want their kids to succeed. They want the math program to succeed. And I guess maybe I just feel more comfortable if I could actually see what the rubric was and how things are measured, because there's something to be said about MCAS. Sort of is what it is. It's sort of objective. And then the subjective data points, I just would like to know what would prevent someone, and I'm not speaking in terms of not being a professional, but what would prevent someone from having high hopes that our kids are doing what they're supposed to do, but actually, it's hard to measure.
Yeah. So whenever you're working with qualitative data, that's part of qualitative data. When I think about qualitative data, sometimes you think about, for example, scientists when they were doing field study, right? So let's say you're a scientist studying, giraffes in the wild, and you have experts in that field just studying behaviors, trends, patterns, and they're taking data on, as experts, they're taking data on the day-to-day, whatever it is that they're measuring. Qualitative data, I think sometimes is hard for people to wrap their heads around because it's not test scores, it's not numbers, it's not necessarily numerical, although there might be some element of counting or something like that. But it's largely observational, and you have to have a high level of trust in the people that are performing that for you. And the people that will be doing the observing are not people that have any stake in the game. They're not, we're not asking classroom teachers to observe their own students and provide some kind of a score, because that's not what it's really about. What we're really trying to learn and understand is how our students are developing their speaking skills over time. So I think you've heard me talk about this before. I think we're talking about kids performing on tests, but I think we all know that a real career and college-ready skill is for students to be able to engage in dialogue, to be able to speak academically, to be able to talk about their learning, to be able to, in math, it's really actually a wonderful process to watch. With our new math curriculum, we're watching our elementary school students talk about collaborate in solving a problem together, maybe 4 students together. And each student is saying, this is a strategy I think we should try. And then, students are contributing to that. And what evidence do you have? And they're kind of working through that problem together. And we're building their skills around that kind of dialogue, hopefully over this continuum all the way through their senior year in high school, because we know that when kids go to college, they're really expected to be able to present, exhibit their work, talk about their work. And again, that correlation, even with quantitative data, students are really being asked on the MCAS and other measures they have to show their work, basically explaining their thinking on paper, if you will, or on the computer, and practice talking through those steps out loud is a real benefit, not only to the student, but to the teachers in the classroom listening in. So the piece about students collaborating around their thinking and talking a lot about their work and their understanding and their problem solving is that the teacher is able to, the amount of formative data that you get as a teacher to circulate a room and listening to students thinking out loud is so much richer than having kids, scribbling away at their own, solving of the problem. You can really capture a lot about what kids are thinking, how they're thinking about it, untangling their misconceptions or confusions, scaffolding, and helping them build their skills. And meanwhile, the students are really learning kind of that academic talk. This is how I chose to solve this problem, and the strategy I used, and why I think it worked. So I think we have to kind of think about it. It's not really kind of understanding our trends and our growth. Is really learning the reason we're using data is to inform our teaching, to inform, our practice in schools, how to really understand how we're doing and what we can do for kids to help accelerate that growth more. So it's not, I don't know if when people worry about qualitative data a little bit, that they're worried. What kind of results it might yield. I think it's really just looking at observational trends over time. Like I said, it's that field study, if you will. Just instead of having binoculars, we'll just be there live and really, watching students' growth over time and how their skills are developing and and across grade levels. I don't know if that's helpful, but using rubrics have very specific performance language at different performance levels. And that's what makes rubrics a great tool. In fact, in some ways, it's rich data compared to a test score. When you look at a student's test performance, it's certainly an important data point, but a lot of times that number may not tell you everything that you need to know. You can gather a lot more information over a period of days or weeks or months listening to that child talk about their learning out loud, if that's helpful.
I think it's great. I'm certainly not opposed to the qualitative data at all, but I just wanted to know a little bit more about how it's measured and how true the data would be. And it sounds like you've explained it really well. I mean, I'm very familiar with rubrics, and I think, you could even quantify those, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then you could use that as a plot, on a scale if you needed.
Yeah, that's what they'll be using the rubrics for, those performance levels, and say, what percentage of students, this is like, this is across, grade levels, and what percentage of students are kind of in that proficiency, space, and over time, are we able to kind of move that trend upward? And that's kind of really the point of a lot of our new curriculum that we've purchased, is to really help students with that. And I think we really want to see and need to see if that's happening, and
in the real time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's great.
Those are great questions, yeah.
Mr. Adams?
Thanks, Rob. So thank you, Dr. Smith. It's really informative. I was thinking about it when I was looking at it before the meeting, going back to the conversation we had a few weeks ago about members of the Board of Selectmen and others reacting to the Boston Magazine, the annual best schools. And I think, as you pointed out in the goals, one of the things I think we want to do is we want to use this data to inform the community about what the investments that the community is making are yielding in terms of student achievement. So this is really, really important for that purpose alone. I had some thoughts or a couple of questions. So could you explained it, but could you explain again why you chose the grade levels that you chose as markers along this process?
Sure. So a lot of educators use grade 3 as an important step, because a lot of those pre-literacy skills and literacy skills, and that is, kind of begin to come to fruition. Students really start to become like true readers at grade 3. And so that's one of the reasons that's where the MCAS assessment begins as well. So we thought grade 4 can be a great target grade 2. And the only reason we chose grade 3 is because we've made a real investment in early childhood education in Wakefield. So we thought we really kind of wanted to get a look at, we should be able to see if the new phonics curriculum is really helping shore up some of those, literacy skills. So that's the reason we chose 3. It was really kind of a toss-up between 3 and 4. We all believe that grade 5 is really essential. Because particularly in the Wakefield Public Schools, I'm not sure if we were in a different school district where grade 5 was an elementary school grade, we would have chosen that grade. But it's a real transitional grade in the Wakefield Public Schools, because our 5th graders are in the middle school. And in 5th grade, in a lot of ways, is still an elementary school grade. So we want to be very intentional about watching that transition and monitoring that data to make sure that we're really treating that grade still as an elementary school grade in many aspects, but then in its transitional piece to the higher grade levels. And then the others really, 8 and 10 are very typical, again, with, a lot of data tools you'll see at the state level. You'll see 8 and 10 because of the MCAS. So at the high school, we only utilize the MCAS in grade 10.
Right.
So, and then grade 8 is that last middle school year and kind of that opportunity to look at SGP, the student growth percentile between 8 and 10. So that's why we chose those.
Okay, great.
Yeah,
that's helpful. So I had a question. I think you answered the question I had about the theory of action around the math discourse, because at first I was thinking that the idea behind that was really primarily about verbal skills. But I think the verbal skills and the social skills are in the service of deeper math reasoning, right? In other words, the dialogue itself, the process of sharing the work, working collaboratively deepens the understanding of the mathematical concepts, right?
Correct.
Right, okay.
And I think what you'll see when you see the school improvement plans for the middle school and the high school in particular, I think their goals are not going to be specifically around just math discourse, but around discourse in all subject areas.
Right.
So we really want our students talking about our learning across all areas. The reason at the district level we chose math specifically was because of the possible correlation with the MCAS data and really looking at mathematical reasoning,
Right.
both qualitatively and quantitatively. So we
Right.
thought that would be a really nice data point for us to kind of focus on.
Yep, yep.
But we're generally interested in students talking about their learning,
Right.
learning to present, learning to debate, learning to discuss. Just in general, we're interested in that. As you know, we're working on accountable talk at the elementary school level where students are really, dialoguing about their reading, for
Right,
example.
right.
But we thought the math has this really interesting correlation with reasoning
Yep.
and perhaps strengthening those skills as
Right,
well.
right.
And a theory of action really hypothesizes that
Right.
that will happen
Right.
and occur, but we won't know until we see if that's a true correlation. I guess.
Okay, thank you, that's great. And then my last observation, and tell me if I'm off base here, but I'm always conscious of the third C, college, career, and
Community.
community, right? So I don't see community in this, and I'm not sure if there's, if you thought about that, if there's a possibility of integrating community-based goals into some of this, into the data dashboard, what that would look like, or if
Yeah,
maybe
thank
that's a
you.
future endeavor.
Yeah. Well, that's great feedback. Thank you.
Okay.
I think that's we've been very focused on these two student growth threads, but that
Right.
would be an incredible third one, certainly, and worthy of consideration. But I think kind of in keeping with that, I think you'll see what we're trying to do is and I think in a lot of ways we are modeling for other districts as well, to just get beyond just MCAS scores.
Right, exactly,
There's
yeah,
a lot more to what
yeah.
happens in school.
Right.
Besides just the, what we can measure and what we do measure with MCAS, but really putting some value on other things. And of course, community would be
Right.
another really,
Right.
good one and
Right,
important one.
and you talked about how far you've come we've come as a district in developing, measuring qualitative data, and obviously
Right.
in the community area, that's where qualitative data is
Right.
probably paramount.
Yeah.
But if we can do that, let's do
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
I think our system does it well,
Yeah.
reaches that goal well. So something to think about.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Mr. Markham.
Thank you, Dr. Smith. This is incredibly informative and fascinating, frankly. I just really wanted to chime in and support both Ann and Greg's points, and without being redundant, because I think you both raised some really good questions. To Ann's point on the rubric, is the socio-mathematical rubric something you could actually share with us?
Absolutely. I can share them. I'll share them both with you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you.
Ms. Morgan.
I have a more operational question. Where is this data physically being collected? Are we using a reporting or an analytics tool, or is this going to be in Excel and someone's keying it all in and creating the graphs?
Yeah, so right at the moment, that's what's happening.
Okay.
We have someone assisting me by putting this all into Excel and creating the graphs for us. As you know, a little bit of a dream of mine at some point would be to have someone to do some data work for us, because it's a challenging thing for us to do, but at this point, that's what we're doing. Yeah.
Okay.
So, but we do have a lot of this data already kind of sitting there. I mean, the MCAS data we have, of course, but we do have writing data now going back several years, as I shared some of it with you last year on my own evaluation. So we have some writing data now, which we need to just kind of pull out. We do have benchmark data going back to 2015, so we know we have some, some common assessment data that we can definitely use. And some of it will be new, some of it we won't have. The discourse data we won't have back to 2015, but we'll just start entering it in. But you have to start somewhere, and I'd love to see, I think this will be like anything else. This will be a first time for us, so it's not going to be perfect. And but I think it is time for us to really start looking as a school district to see if we're making progress, how we're making progress, and measuring what we value. And as I said, we're really valuing kind of two things: our kids' abilities to apply their skills and our students' ability to talk about their learning. Those are kind of the two places we're really placing a lot of value right now. So we're going to give it our best effort. It might be a little messy at the beginning, but we'll get it going, and I'm hoping and really believing that in a few years, I hope this will become more of a routine, just kind of look at growth trends and to really use the information that we gather in a meaningful way.
I think Excel is great, and I know this is the beginning, but I do think there are a lot of tools available that we could dive a little deeper into the data with than you can with Excel.
Yeah. I'd love to get any tips, and this is where people with a lot more expertise in data than myself or some of my colleagues would love that input.
Just one more question. Would there be a way that you'd be able to look at this data and focus on particular groups of students? So I think when you had brought this up before, for example, do we want to see the growth in our students who are on IEPs, for example, or kids who are ELL, or, should we be looking at any gaps in other groups? Some of our I don't know, vulnerable groups, for example. I'm very interested in seeing that in addition to sort of the classroom and the district and the school.
No, that's great, and that we have been disaggregating data. So they will do that for us with the MCAS data, and that's and of course things are all beginning to shift with the accountability and the new ESSA, and kind of more to come on that. I'm hoping to have Doug Lyons at our next meeting, kind of presenting, where things are going with all of that. But we will have that disaggregated data. Whether or not we choose or want to include it on this particular dashboard, we'll just have to decide whether that's the kind of the place that we want to have the disaggregated data, or if that's sort of another layer that we want to, kind of dig down into. But I'm also really interested in that data. It's one of the reasons I have a great deal of pride in the fact that several of our schools have moved to level 1 schools, because that's largely not just around proficiency, but it's around your student at-risk populations, demonstrating expected growth or target growth. So I'm also very passionate about that area. I think with the discourse piece, we'll probably start very holistically, because this will be new, and we don't want anyone to be on the spot with it. I think we want to just really start with just kind of trends and patterns. Where are our kids now? Maybe we just need some baseline. How do our kids do with these, these standards right now in terms of being able to talk about their learning and talk about their strategies? So I think that we'll keep that pretty holistic to begin with, but we definitely can dig deeper on the quantitative sides of things.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
All right, and that was it for me. I did include one document in your packet. I feel like we are just on automated audit time, because we're being audited for yet another piece. I received a letter, and this was for IDEA, Special Education Entitlement Grant, and a few other pieces. So I just wanted to keep you, it's not, they said, please be advised, it's not a full audit. It's just to review fiscal procedures and documentation. So we will, Mr. Pifferling and Ms. O'Neill will do the preparation for that when the time comes. And that is it for me, Mr. Tiro. Thank you.
Okay, subcommittee reports. Mr. Callahan is not here tonight. Labor and Personnel, Mr. Markham.
We have a meeting set for October 24 at 6 p.m., after which we will have a report to the full committee.
Thank you. Policy and Planning, Ms. Fortier.
We haven't met since finalizing the policy and procedures. So.
Thank you. Future dates and agenda items. Our next meeting will be Tuesday, October 24th. School committee comments. Ms. Morgan.
Thank you.
Mr. Liakos.
None for me, thanks.
Ms. Fortier.
I'm okay, thanks.
Mr. Markham.
I would just like to wish the best of luck to the sophomores and juniors who are taking the PSATs on Saturday. I happen to have one of them in my household, so I know that there's a lot of chatter about that, but certainly best of luck to the PSAT students.
Thank you.
Mr. Pifferling?
Oh, Mr. Pifferling, please.
If I may, when in my haste to put out the circuit breaker primer, I forgot to cite my source. I did use some information from DESI's website, so I will send this out to the entire committee again. I apologize for that oversight.
Thank you, Mr. Pifferling. Okay, I have nothing. So with that, is there a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion that we adjourn the school committee meeting of Tuesday, October 10, 2017.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All in favor? Thanks, everybody.